Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of The Death of Art. We're in Brooklyn, New York at the Brooklyn Museum. The show we're about to see is called Copy Machine Manifestos, Artists Who Make Zines. This is going to be one of those shows where they're displaying art but in a new medium. And I love seeing art in a new medium. Sometimes though it's not worth it. We're going to find that out. But before we go in, I would like to point out the beautiful neoclassical architecture of the Brooklyn Museum. It's truly a masterpiece. Unfortunately, as so often happens in New York, somewhere along the line, somebody came along and decided it needed a modern addition to the front, which 30 years later looks absolutely awful. It looks like an airport in Honduras or something. But anyway, I'm not going to let this color my judgment, so let's go see what we find. This is Vile or Vile magazine. I love this one because it just broke boundaries all over the place. It was kind of punk rock, it was kind of industrial, but they also did their own thing. Great work. As I remember it, most zines were actually punk rock zines that followed bands. I myself wasn't that interested in the comings and goings of bands, but I loved the way they look and would sometimes just buy them for the pictures. This was Search and Destroy. This was in most newsstands in the Lower East Side. This was your go-to magazine on what's happening in the punk scene in the United States, coast to coast, and a lot of New York too. These are great. You notice the one difficulty with zines is that when you got everything, you had to then fold them and make sure it all registered and get that staple just right so the spine lined up. This shows you that whole process right there. Before we go on, I would like to introduce one of the raunchiest, crudest, most pornographic zines I know. And that is the one I made with Cyril Mazard. It's called Garsecet. It's an accordion format book. We made each of these by hand. There was no printer. It was just Xerox and glue. And this is actually the hardcover version. Eat it up, guys. I like my zines raunchy as hell, and this is some good example. But within that raunchiness, there can sometimes be some amazing creativity, even in the craft. Take a look at this one. This zine was not stapled together, but it was sewn with a sewing machine, and they just put a little keychain on it, and there it is. Well, little details like that I find fantastic. And I love the name, Box Cutter Blues. That's a classic. You can't get this without a lot of difficulty, where you see paste up marks and handwriting and typewriters that are malfunctioning, photos that kind of blur and age. This is beautiful. This really captures the energy of the time. This is one I remember from the 80s. It was called The Subway Sun, and it was a zine that documented graffiti as it appeared and disappeared in New York City and stories of graffiti writers. At the time, I myself was a teenager and a graffiti writer and saw this occasionally. There's some really great work here, and this is the sort of style and work that is really part of yesteryear. You don't see this kind of work anymore. This stuff really brings me back. I used to see this on newsstands. They would actually sell this around. I love this one. This is a Spanish language zine. I've never heard of it, but all of these covers are magnificent and hilarious. The sense of humor really saves it. I mean, actually elevates it. Brilliant. This little display is actually one way to make a zine. If you're clever, you can line up your little pages in such a way that you can fold them over again, and then just slice the outside pages, and you have a book. These are set up. So these are the unsliced ones, so they're up and down, but they actually fold together and get cut to make a little book. Very cool. This was a real blast from the past, and I think the reason why it's going to remain in the past, because the main venue of zines, well, this and mail, are both a thing of the past. Have a good night, folks. Please like, please subscribe, and please ring the bell.